wandering through life like zombies glued to their screens. Hey, I'm not pointing fingers here. I've been there too. I've chased trends, scrolled endlessly, and felt that emptiness creep in when I realized I was just going through the motions. It's like we've traded our souls for instant gratification and distractions, pretending it's all okay, but deep down, we know it's not. If you're tired of feeling stuck and are ready to face some hard, uncomfortable truths, then stick around. Because it's time we snap out of it and find our way back to what really matters, one digital overload at a time. Let's dive deep into what's really going on with this digital overload that's taken over our lives. It's like we've all signed up for a 24/7 information buffet, and we just keep stuffing ourselves without thinking about the consequences. From the moment we wake up, we're bombarded with notifications, texts, emails, social media alerts, and news updates. It's relentless. I'll be honest, I've been caught up in it too. I've started my day with the best intentions, planning to be productive, only to fall down the rabbit hole of endless scrolling. One minute I'm checking the weather, and the next thing I know, I'm knee-deep in videos of dogs skateboarding. It's ridiculous, right? But here's the thing. This constant flood of information isn't just a harmless distraction. It's rewiring our brains. We've become so accustomed to the instant gratification of swiping, clicking, and liking that we've lost our ability to focus on anything for more than a few seconds. It's like our attention spans have been shattered into a million pieces, and we're left picking up the scraps, trying to piece together some semblance of concentration. And let's not even talk about the anxiety. You know that feeling when you're waiting for a reply, and you start obsessively checking your phone every 2 minutes? Or that weird panic when you realize you left the house without your phone, like you're suddenly cut off from the world? I've been there too. It's like we're all hooked on this digital IV drip, constantly needing a fix of information, even if it's utterly meaningless. The worst part is, we convince ourselves it's normal, even necessary. But here's the harsh reality. This digital overload is making us less human. We're so busy reacting to every ping and buzz that we're not really living our lives. We're just existing in this fragmented state, always plugged in, but never truly present. I found myself in conversations where my mind is half listening because I'm thinking about that next notification. It's like our brains are constantly split between the real world and the digital one, and we're losing touch with what's actually important. Now, I'm not saying we should all ditch our phones and go live in the woods, though sometimes that sounds pretty tempting, but we've got to start taking back control. We need to stop letting the digital world dictate our every move and start setting some boundaries. It's about being intentional with our time, learning to say no to the constant barrage of information, and reconnecting with the things that genuinely matter. Because if we don't, we'll keep spiraling deeper into this digital abyss, losing ourselves in the process. So here's my challenge to you, and to myself, because I'm still working on this too. Let's start cutting out the noise. Let's take a break from the endless stream of information and give ourselves room to think, to breathe, to be present. Trust me, the world will keep spinning without us checking our phones every 5 minutes. And who knows, we might just find that life is a whole lot richer when we're not constantly glued to a screen. Lack of self-awareness. Let's tackle something most people don't want to admit: our glaring lack of self-awareness in 2024. It seems like everyone's got an opinion about everything, but when it comes to knowing themselves, most people are completely in the dark. And I'm not pointing fingers here. I've fallen into this trap too. There was a time when I thought I had it all figured out, following the latest trends, mimicking what I saw online, and convincing myself that I was living my best life. But deep down, I was just lost, trying to be someone I wasn't because I didn't actually know who I was. We live in a world where it's easier to swipe through someone else's life than to take a hard look at our own. We are constantly bombarded with images of what we should be: successful, happy, always on top of our game. But here's the catch. Most of us are so busy chasing after this idea of perfection that we've forgotten to ask ourselves what we actually want. Who are we beneath all the filters and facades? What drives us? What are our real values, passions, and fears? These are the tough questions, the ones that require us to dig deep and confront parts of ourselves we'd rather ignore. But here's the brutal truth. If we don't know who we are, we're just drifting, letting the world decide our path for us. We start living lives that aren't really ours, following the crowd because it's easier than standing alone. I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it in others. We become products of our environment, shaped by the opinions and expectations of others, losing touch with our true selves. And the worst part is, most of us don't even realize it's happening. We're so caught up in the day-to-day grind, the endless pursuit of approval, that we don't stop to question if this is the life we truly want. Think about it. How often do we take the time to really reflect on who we are and what we stand for? How often do we silence the noise, unplug from the digital world, and just sit with our thoughts? It's uncomfortable, isn't it? There's a reason why most people avoid it. Self-awareness requires honesty, and honesty can be painful. It forces us to confront our flaws, our insecurities, and the uncomfortable truths about our lives. But without it, we're just living on autopilot, going through the motions without any real sense of purpose. I've been there. I've followed the crowd, convinced that if I just did what everyone else was doing, I'd find happiness. But all it did was leave me feeling empty and disconnected from who I really am. It wasn't until I started asking myself the hard questions, digging into my own mind, and really reflecting on my life that I began to understand what I truly wanted. And let me tell you, it wasn't easy. It meant admitting that I'd been wrong about a lot of things, that I'd been chasing after the wrong goals, and that I needed to make some serious changes. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Most people are lost because they lack self-awareness. They're living lives that aren't true to who they are, chasing after dreams that aren't really theirs, and wondering why they feel so unfulfilled. But the good news is that it's never too late to change that. It starts with asking yourself the tough questions, being brutally honest with yourself, and taking the time to really understand who you are. It's about peeling back the layers of expectation and influence and reconnecting with your true self. Because once you know who you are, once you're truly self-aware, everything changes. You start living with intention, making choices that align with your values, and finding fulfillment in being true to yourself. And that's something worth striving for, even if it means confronting some uncomfortable truths along the way. Procrastination. Let's get real about one of the biggest challenges we face in 2024, chronic procrastination. We've all been there, putting things off until the last minute, convincing ourselves that we'll get to it later. But the truth is, later often turns into never, and before we know it, the opportunities have passed us by. I'm not just pointing fingers here. I've been caught in this cycle more times than I'd like to admit. There were moments in my life when I had big plans, ambitious goals, and all the right intentions, but somehow I found myself stuck in a loop of delay and avoidance. Let's break it down. Why do we procrastinate? It's not because we're lazy or unmotivated. It's often the exact opposite. We're overwhelmed, scared of failure, or perfectionists who fear not getting it right. The task at hand seems too daunting, so we distract ourselves with smaller, less important tasks, fooling ourselves into thinking we're still being productive. I've done it myself, cleaning the house, reorganizing my desk, answering emails that could wait, all to avoid that one big task I knew I needed to tackle. And you know what? It feels good in the moment, like you're busy and getting things done. But deep down, you know you're just avoiding the real work. Procrastination has become a chronic issue because of the comfort and convenience of our modern lives. We're surrounded by endless distractions, social media, streaming services, and a million other ways to kill time without even realizing it. It's easy to say, "I'll start tomorrow," when there's always something entertaining or easier to do right now. But tomorrow never comes, and the longer we delay, the bigger the task seems. It becomes this looming shadow that we'd rather not face, so we keep pushing it away, pretending it'll resolve itself. But it doesn't. The longer we procrastinate, the more it eats away at us, creating anxiety, stress, and a nagging sense of guilt. And here's the kicker. Chronic procrastination doesn't just kill productivity, it kills potential. How many dreams have been shelved because of procrastination? How many opportunities missed? I've had ideas that I was passionate about, projects I knew could make a difference, but because I kept putting them off, they never saw the light of day. And that's the real tragedy. We procrastinate ourselves out of the lives we want, convincing ourselves that we'll get to it eventually, only to find that eventually never comes. So, what's the solution? It's about facing the reality of procrastination and taking concrete steps to overcome it. It starts with breaking tasks down into manageable chunks, setting clear deadlines, and holding ourselves accountable. It's about recognizing the patterns of avoidance and making a conscious effort to tackle the big tasks head-on, even when they're intimidating. And let's not forget self-compassion. Procrastination is a habit, not a character flaw. It takes time to change, and it's okay to stumble along the way. But the more we practice facing our fears and taking action, the easier it becomes to break the cycle. So here's my challenge to you. Identify one area where procrastination is holding you back and take the first step toward overcoming it today. It might be uncomfortable and it might be difficult, but trust me, the sense of accomplishment and relief you'll feel when you finally tackle that task is worth it. Because when you stop procrastinating, you start living up to your potential, and that's a life worth striving for. Perfectionism. Let's face it, perfectionism is a sneaky beast in 2024. It creeps into our lives, disguised as a quest for excellence, but it often leaves us feeling paralyzed and defeated. We've all fallen into its trap at some point, striving for that impossible standard, trying to make everything just right, and ultimately finding ourselves stuck in a cycle of frustration and self-doubt. I've been there. I used to think that if I could just get everything perfect, then I'd finally be satisfied and successful. But guess what? Perfectionism is a never-ending game. No matter how hard you try, there's always one more detail to fix, one more thing to improve. It's like trying to catch a mirage. The closer you get, the further it seems to move. And the worst part, while we're caught up in this endless pursuit of perfection, we're missing out on the real progress and achievements we could be making. Perfectionism is often rooted in fear, fear of failure, fear of judgment, or fear of not measuring up. It's the idea that if we can just get everything right, then we'll be accepted, valued, or loved. But in reality, perfectionism is a major roadblock. It keeps us from starting new projects, from finishing what we've started, and from sharing our work with others. We become so focused on making everything flawless that we never actually get anything done. Think about it. How many times have you put off a project because you were waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect conditions? How many times have you avoided sharing your work because you were afraid it wasn't good enough? Perfectionism is the reason many of us never reach our goals or share our ideas with the world. We're so caught up in making sure everything is just right that we end up paralyzed by indecision and self-doubt. But here's the hard truth. Perfection doesn't exist. No matter how much we strive for it, there will always be imperfections, flaws, and room for improvement. And that's okay. It's our imperfections that make us human and our efforts that truly matter. The key is to shift our focus from seeking perfection to making progress. Instead of getting stuck in the endless cycle of revisions and second-guessing, we need to embrace the idea of good enough and move forward. It's about taking imperfect action and learning as we go. It's about accepting that mistakes are part of the process and that growth comes from taking risks and making adjustments along the way. Perfectionism may feel like it's pushing us to be our best, but in reality, it's holding us back from achieving anything at all. So here's my challenge to you. Identify one area where perfectionism is keeping you stuck and commit to taking imperfect action today. It might be messy and it might not be perfect, but it will be progress. And that's what really counts. Because in the end, it's not about being perfect. It's about making a difference and moving forward, one imperfect step at a time. Lack of self-care. Let's talk about something that's often brushed aside in 2024. Self-care. It seems like everyone's talking about it, but in reality, most of us are terrible at practicing it. We're so caught up in the hustle, the demands of work, and the constant noise of daily life that we forget to take care of ourselves. And trust me, I'm not exempt from this. I used to think that if I just pushed through, I'd get everything done and somehow be okay. But it turns out, ignoring self-care doesn't make you stronger or more productive. It just makes you burnt out. Self-care isn't just about bubble baths and spa days, though those can be nice. It's about the basics: getting enough sleep, eating well, exercising, and taking time to relax and recharge. It's about setting boundaries and saying no when you need to. But in our 24/7 world, self-care often takes a backseat. We push ourselves to the limit, thinking that if we just keep going, we'll eventually catch up and everything will be fine. But that's a dangerous game. Eventually, our bodies and minds break down, and all the work we've put in gets undermined by stress, fatigue, and burnout. Here's the thing. Self-care isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. Without it, we're running on empty, and that's not sustainable. I've learned this the hard way. There were times when I ignored my need for rest and recovery, and it only led to more stress and less productivity. It's like trying to drive a car with an empty tank. You might keep going for a while, but eventually you're going to stall out. So why do we neglect self-care? Often it's because we think we don't have the time, or we feel guilty for taking a break. But here's the reality. If we don't take care of ourselves, we can't take care of anything else. We're less effective, less focused, and less able to handle the challenges that come our way. It's time we start prioritizing self-care as an essential part of our daily routine. It's about recognizing that taking time for ourselves is not a selfish act, but a necessary one. It's about creating space in our lives for rest and rejuvenation so we can show up fully in everything we do. So here's my challenge to you. Take a moment today to assess your self-care routine. Are you getting enough rest? Are you eating well? Are you taking time to relax and recharge? If not, make a plan to incorporate self-care into your daily life. It doesn't have to be complicated or time-consuming. It can be as simple as taking a few minutes to breathe deeply, going for a walk, or setting aside time to do something you enjoy. Remember, self-care isn't about doing more. It's about doing what's necessary to keep yourself balanced and healthy, and when you take care of yourself, you'll find that you're better equipped to handle everything life throws your way. So let's start making self-care a priority and see how it transforms our lives for the better. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the Stoic Life Journal. If you found value in our video, please click on one of the suggested videos on the screen to continue exploring how Stoicism can transform your daily life and motivate your mind. We appreciate you being a part of our thoughtful community. Until next time.